Miles and Malene had been united for nearly a decade. Their bond was the epitome of a flourishing relationship. Mutual admiration, deep affection, and genuine care. These, along with countless other warm sentiments, aptly describe the pair. Yet this had not always been the case. Melon, in her tempestuous youth, often drove Miles to the brink with her dramatic outbursts when they first started dating. Ever the epitome of calm, Miles endured these episodes with remarkable fortitude, never letting them faze him, until one day Malene's tantrums ceased altogether. When Miles eventually decided to pop the question, he sensibly realized it would require a significant financial commitment. His then current employment, though sufficient for day-to-day living, left much to be desired in terms of financial stability. Seeking a better path, he consulted his father, who proposed he join the family business. The role demanded both intellect and dedication, but came with a handsome salary. The primary drawback? Regular business trips. After weighing his options, Miles accepted the offer and never looked back. He grew fond of the job. During these trips away, Malene found comfort and support from her elder sister and brother-in-law. Malene's parents had passed away before she graduated high school, leaving her elder sister to step into a maternal role. This sister frequently checked in on Malene, inquiring about her well-being, her meals, and her personal life. With a 12-year age gap between them, Malene often bristled at the notion that her older sister still considered her childish. She'd frequently shout, "You're not my mom," before hanging up the phone, stewing and thinking about the perfect retort to needle her sister further. This dynamic had roots in their childhood, where Malene had grown accustomed to her sister's protective nature. Generally speaking, she was pretty laid back and never held grudges against her sister for too long. Eventually, the younger sibling came to understand how her actions had deeply hurt the one who had stepped in to fill their mother's shoes. 3 years prior, Isabel tied the knot with a man named Carson. Malene was over the moon that her beloved sister had found joy in a second marriage. Miles and Carson hit it off right away, discovering they had much in common, most notably a mutual affection for Malene. From the moment they met, Carson was smitten with his wife's sister, though he constantly reminded himself. He was committed to another, yet he harbored secret feelings for Malene for an entire year. Then, during a customary family celebration at the country house, she unexpectedly barged into his room with a clear intention. After that, their private encounters became a regular occurrence. Unassuming, Miles remained blissfully unaware of his wife's clandestine escapades and his friend's betrayal during his absences. Little did he know that a potential family scandal was unfolding right under his nose. The affair might have continued unnoticed had it not been for a fortuitous slip-up. Until this point, Malene and Carson had never risked a prolonged separation. Their meetings were brief, either at her house when her husband was not home, or in a secluded place near the city. For them, this was the first time they had decided on something as daring as spending a few days in seclusion, which seemed thrillingly reckless. Carson concocted a story about needing to visit his company's main office, while Malene claimed she was relaxing in picturesque locations with friends, away from the chaos of the city. Miles saw no reason to doubt his wife's words, completely unaware of the impending, forbidden romance. On a beautiful Saturday morning, Miles was suddenly awakened by a shrill phone call while he was on a business trip. At first, he tried to ignore it, believing he still had plenty of precious time to sleep. However, the caller's persistence grew, with multiple calls in a row. Annoyed and sleep-deprived, the grumpy man finally answered rather impolitely. "Who's calling?" Miles muttered. On the other end, he was greeted by the worried voice of his neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. The shift in her tone immediately put Miles on alert. "Well, Mrs. Jenkins, what seems to be the matter?" he asked. The woman explained that water was pouring from her ceiling, yet everything appeared dry in the apartment directly above hers. This meant that the problem had likely originated in Miles and Malene's shared living space. Miles tensed, knowing that his wife was supposed to be away and wouldn't be back for another day. Without hesitation, he decided to turn to Carson and Isabel for help in fixing the situation before any further damage was done. Expressing his gratitude to his neighbor, Miles hastily searched for his friend's contact details and eagerly dialed the number. However, all he heard was deep silence on the other end of the line. His acquaintance seemed to be unavailable. Cursing under his breath, he dialed his wife's number but got the same result. Disappointment and confusion washed over him, causing his hands to tremble as he gripped the phone tightly. Isabel answered the call almost instantly. She listened attentively to the unsettling story and, after a brief pause, asked, "Where's Malene?" Naturally, an inquisitive mind would ponder such a question. "Gone. God knows where," Miles bellowed into Isabel's ear, "and she didn't even bother to tell me about it. That's how it is. She left, and I'm left here all alone." Isabel, lost in thought, muttered, "Is her phone off too?" Unlike Miles, who was blissfully unaware of his wife's infidelity, Isabel had already discovered the truth about her husband's transgressions. She knew there was definitely someone else in his life, although she had yet to find out who. Now, hearing from her brother-in-law that both her sister and her husband had turned off their phones while being away from the city, a painful suspicion arose in her mind, a dreadful possibility that this was more than just a coincidence. However, she kept her suspicions to herself, not wanting to alarm Miles unnecessarily. After assuring the worried man that she would immediately go to their house, turn off the water, and resolve the issue, she received a heartfelt thank you. Isabel left with a heavy heart. When she entered the apartment and walked into the kitchen to shut off the water, she stumbled upon something completely out of place, a wristwatch lying on the kitchen table. It was unmistakable. Her husband's wristwatch. Carson had never worn this style, preferring sportier accessories, yet Isabel recognized it immediately. It was the very watch she had given him years ago, a gift from the depths of her heart. The initials engraved on the back of the dial confirmed beyond doubt that it belonged to her husband. Isabel's heart ached. She hesitated, unsure whether to tell her brother-in-law everything, fearing he might not believe her, or worse, reprimand her for accusing her own husband. After all, there was a chance the watch had ended up there by accident. Perhaps Carson had brought groceries for her sister to spare her from carrying heavy bags. Yet, her intuition told her otherwise. While Isabel recounted the complicated story, Miles listened attentively, not interrupting once. He tried his best to process what he had just heard, but the hard evidence, the watch, left him deeply unsettled. He asked Isabel to wait until he could return to the city, where together they would confront the traitors. With a heavy heart, Isabel reluctantly agreed. She meticulously planned a dinner for the evening, setting the stage for their confrontation. Throughout the week, she had contemplated every possible outcome, yet reality turned out to be far different from what she had envisioned. None of them denied their actions. When Miles posed the pivotal question of the evening, both Carson and Malene confessed without hesitation. They responded affirmatively almost immediately, without attempting to justify or conceal their betrayal. After that, continuing the dinner felt pointless. The lovers apologized to their respective partners, packed their things, and left. Miles and Isabel remained seated in stunned silence, their mouths slightly open, their hearts shattered, blindsided by the deceit. After the divorce, Miles wanted nothing to do with his wife. However, snippets of information about her life occasionally reached him. He learned that Carson and Malene had reconciled and even had a child together. Yet, after 3 years of marriage, she discovered Carson in bed with another woman. In a way, Miles relished the irony. His had finally experienced firsthand the pain she had once inflicted on him. He took a certain grim satisfaction in knowing that her own betrayal had come full circle, shattering her life with undeniable force. Cheating Secrets podcast like me